So many people think the process should be easy or something's wrong, but the creative process is usually messy. Every book I've ever worked on, at every point, gets feedback that doesn't align with what I was thinking. Aim is to get the book to a better place that will touch more people and resonate with more people.
Welcome to the Outlier Mindset podcast, your guide for living a life by design. Here, we explore the journey of becoming an outlier, finding your purpose, mastering your mindset, optimizing your health, achieving financial freedom, and building a life centered around your passions. So tune in, transform, and thrive. Welcome to the Outlier Mindset. Let the journey begin. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Outlier Mindset podcast. I'm your host, Rodman Schley, and if you're an aspiring author but have no idea where to start, I've got the perfect guest for you. Bill Blankschaen is the founder and chief story architect of Storybuilders, a creative team that's dedicated to helping people tell impactful stories that educate and change lives. As a New York Times bestselling writer, Bill collaborates with influential figures such as John Maxwell, Kevin Harrington, and Lewis Howes to create compelling books and learning experiences. I've worked with him personally, and I can verify that he and his team are the real deal. Bill, welcome to the show.
Rodman, a true pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's so awesome to have you here too, Bill. For those of you who don't know, Bill and I know each other from the Summit of Greatness. We met back there a couple of events ago, and we became fast friends. Not only fast friends, but Bill is also the publisher of my last two books. So I'm really glad to have you here to talk about the development of the books and how you develop out these stories.
Well, I'm excited to be here. Not only a privilege to be publishing your books and to have worked with you, but thankful that you put up with me stalking you at the Summit of Greatness and are connecting through that as well. So excited to be here.
Well, you're very lucky because you get this incredible staff of people that work for you and they surround you. And that includes your wife, who I had the pleasure of meeting while we were at the summit. So I'd like today, more than anything, just to talk about the idea of someone telling their personal story. And I truly believe it's a disservice not to be telling your story, because there could be somebody out there who needs to hear exactly what you have to say.
Well, and you're talking my language, as you know, because I'm all about story. I mean, our company's called Storybuilders. It's what we do. We work with stories all day. I've always loved stories. And I think it is one of the most valuable things we have. It's also one of the most undervalued things that we have, because we're so comfortable with our own stories. We know it, so we don't value it, right? But other people hear our story and it clicks with them and they're inspired by it to do great things.
You know, it seems to me that a lot of people, they just don't understand, like you said, the value of what they know. We know it. And so maybe it's second nature to us, but for somebody else who's sitting there craving that knowledge or craving that information or craving that lesson or healing or whatever it might be, there are so many stories that go untold because we don't think we have something to offer.
Yeah. Well, I think we need to remember, we tell ourselves a story about our own stories. Right. So we're telling ourselves a story about that. And often we need to hear someone else's story to kind of interrupt that narrative that we're telling us and allow us to see different potential, new possibilities, what could be, because our tendency is to go negative, right? To get into a kind of a false narrative built on our own story and what's happened to us. And so hearing someone else's story, like your story as an entrepreneur, as an outlier, right, can inspire me to realize, you know what, maybe I'm not so weird, right? Maybe what I think makes me weird is my secret strength that I can bring to the world and do something amazing as an outlier, right? So, yeah, I totally agree with you. Stories are incredibly valuable, and I'm all about trying to live a story that's really worth telling.
You know, Bill, I feel like it's easier now than it's ever been to take your mental thoughts and your ideas and bring those alive. I wrote my first book when I was 24 years old, and I was on that old version of Microsoft Word that was just grinding it out and grinding it out. It took me a long time to write that book because the technology wasn't that good. So it's hard to tell the story back then. But I feel now it's so much easier than ever to take those things that are upstairs and get them out.
Yeah. We have never lived, humans have never lived in a time when it's been easier to do that, when it's been easier to take what's in your head and your heart, your message, what we call your story, and share it with the world. I mean, it's unprecedented. You think back over human history, we're in a super small percentage of people who now have the privilege of being able to do that. This used to be reserved for only the uber wealthy, right? Or the super rich could do this. The kings of, centuries ago could hire somebody to write down their story. And now anyone has it accessible to them. Now you want to do it well, but anyone has those tools accessible to them. So I totally agree. What a time to be alive.
Yeah, you might not even have to be an exceptional writer. As long as you've got the thoughts and the ideas, like you guys do a little bit of everything, right, Bill? You can come in, and if you've written your whole manuscript yourself, you guys come in and help with the process of getting it out and published, or publishing it maybe for yourselves, or somebody just wants to get their thoughts down on paper. You've got the people who are going to actually help them write that book.
Yeah. Yeah. And not just write it, but write it exceptionally well. And the key word that we use is elevate. We always talk about that internally. How can we take what the ideas someone has and elevate them, go to a new level, go to the next level? We did that in working with your book. I hope, contributing value to, hey, here's my ideas. Great. How can we elevate those? So you're absolutely right. Someone has written a manuscript. How do I bring it to the world? We provide editing, publishing. On the other side of the spectrum, I'm not a writer. I don't want to be a writer. I have ideas. I have thoughts. Not a problem. We work with people all day, every day to get those thoughts out of their head onto paper, in their voice, in the quality they want. And then bring it to life in the real world. So anything in that whole range of, if it deals with books, we can probably help you.
Yeah, and somebody like me, I'm a pretty good writer. I've always been a good writer. I love to write, but I've also got that ADD part of me where it's like I'll get into something and then I get into something else, and then that goes over here and this happens, and sometimes you just don't get back to it. But what was really nice about the process with you guys is that I could go in and I can write, and then I can turn over my writings, and then have somebody go in and, like you said, elevate my writing, elevate my story, make sure that it was reading the way that it should read.
Right. Well, and I think the outcome, first of all, if anybody's watching this, listening to this, and they don't have your book yet, they need to order it right now. The Outlier Mindset. The outcome is phenomenal. As I was telling you, I was looking at a proof copy, and my wife took it out of my hands and started reading through it, and she couldn't put it down. And then she's like, "As soon as you're done with it, I want that back." So it's such an accessible read, and yet a transformative, game changer read drawn from your own story and experience. So, but that's the power of books, right? Through that book, you're going to be able to be inside someone else's head, inside their mind, inside their thought process. People you'll never even meet are going to be touched and impacted, and the course of the world is going to be shifted because you were willing to go through that process to bring those to life in the form of a book.
Yeah, that gives me goosebumps just talking about it, because I know for me, and we've had this conversation before, but the late, great Wayne Dyer, and I loved Wayne Dyer. He was one of those very inspirational people to me. And somebody gave me his book. I might have been like 15 years old when they gave it to me. Your Erroneous Zones. I love that book. And I mean it. It molded my life to who I am today. Every little theory, every little principle there. And for me, I read that book probably once a year for the last maybe 45 years. I'm kind of dating myself there. Well, actually probably about 40 years. We'll call it 40 years. But looking at that book and looking at what it meant to me, what if he never wrote that book? What if he didn't have the courage to write that book? What if he didn't put himself out there? What if he didn't tell his story and I didn't get the opportunity to really make that a part of my life and who I am today? Now, I think that is a real tragedy.
Yeah. It is a tragedy. And there's a lot of people, unfortunately, who are going to go through life and thinking, some people keep telling them, you should write a book, you should write a book, you should write a book. And they'll just keep kicking it down the road because I'm not really sure how, I don't know how to do it. I'm not sure if it's valuable enough. And that's where we really come in, is we can help people figure out, do you have a story worth telling in a book form? Is now the right time? It might not be. And we're happy to tell people that too, that this might not fit the right time frame. But if so, here are some options to bring it to life in a way that you'd really be proud of, in a way that you can do what happened with the book with Wayne, where it has totally changed the trajectory of your life. And you just never know where those books are going to take you.
And you know what? Sometimes if you've just changed that one single life, every bit of the effort is worth it.
Yeah. And it won't be just one. I mean, it's easy to say, hey, if it's just one, is it worth it? Right. And it is, I believe. but it never is just one, right? It's always more. I just had this happen with a book that I'd written years ago. My mother told me, right? So this is a good mother moment. She told me, hey, I ran into somebody and we were talking about your book and they were like, oh, I want to read it. And so they read it and it changed this. I don't know who that person is. I'll never meet them, but I know that it's already impacted them and it's altered the course of what they're doing because of those conversations that take place. Books can go where you will never go. And that's the power of them. And they live on past us, right? The reality is each of us has an expiration date for our time on the earth. Books don't, right? They can continue on beyond us and continue to shape the future long after our window of opportunity has passed.
Bill, I got a question for you. Do you think it gets easier once you get past that first book? I know that I put out about 3 now, 2 of them just recently though. And I kind of felt like after I broke the ice on what would have been my second book, I mean, it was like 20 years before I wrote my second book, but then I wrote that book and then immediately got another one done. And I'm ready to do my next one. I've already got it laid out. I'm already starting to do the work on it. I just feel that once we broke the seal, I just can't wait to get into the next one.
Sure. Well, I've lost count of how many books I've worked on. So I every time I think, hey, I'm going to go back and add them up, I think, oh, I forgot about that one and that one and that one. Absolutely, it gets easier the more books you work on. I mean, I was thinking about this, that idea that Malcolm Gladwell has that idea of 10,000 hours is what it takes to become an expert or something. And I was like, all right, I blew past 10,000 hours working on books a long time ago. But whatever that is, it's definitely easier for me now. However, having worked with people who they're not going to make their life writing books, what you're saying is true if it is a good experience. If that first book is a bad experience, it can actually have the opposite effect of leading them to, oh, I'll never do that again. I wrote a book once. I don't want to touch that. And that's why it's so valuable to come alongside people. And we're not fit for everybody, but to come alongside people who can guide you, who can figure out what works best for you. I mean, we even go as deep now as using Patrick Lencioni's working genius assessment when we work with story partners and have them take that so we can figure out how do we best work with this person and do it in a way, and who do we even put on the team based on that to make strengths align and so forth to make it a really great partnership. So it depends on what your writing experience is. If it's positive, yeah, it gets easier and you continue to learn and grow. But if it's negative, it can actually scare you away. And those ideas can be left untold to the world.
Yeah, it feels to me like there are so many intangible benefits also to writing books, so many things that you're going to get from it. And for me, it's kind of like when we had our television show, which still airs nationally on PBS, and it opened so many incredible doors for me, so many incredible opportunities. I met incredibly fantastic people through the fact that we've got a television show on PBS, and the book kind of does the same thing. A book has credibility, and it helps you go out there and really open a lot of different doors. What are the benefits that you see from writing your own book?
Well, there are a lot of them. First, that obvious one, right? It's a credibility builder. People presume if you wrote a book about something, you must be an expert on it. You must know what you're talking about on it. I told the joke when I was with Lewis Howes at an event, and we were talking about the book development. And I said, it's kind of like, if you go to Harvard and get a degree from Harvard, everyone assumes you know what you're doing, even if you don't, right? Unfortunately, a graduate of Harvard was in the audience, and so that joke didn't go over as well. But it's that kind of thing. If you write a book about something, people assume you know, and the truth is you do. You become an expert because you have to wrestle with the ideas behind it. And so it does serve as a great credibility builder. It also serves, and this is something people don't often realize, as an IP clarifier, right? An intellectual property clarifier, because it forces you to develop a framework for your ideas. So, for example, in your book, you talk about the 7 tenets of the Outlier Mindset. And so you can then take those and turn them into other things, into a keynote speech, into digital courses, into coaching programs, or all kinds of other things can be built off of that can be monetized, right? So I think that's a mistake some people make, is thinking of a book as a standalone. I want to make a lot of money through the sales of the book, rather than seeing the book as an opener to other ways that you can monetize those ideas. And that's actually where most of the money is going to come from, right? You obviously want to get the book in as many people's hands as you can, but At the same time, I know people who have had a very focused strategic strategy about getting the book out because they were looking for certain keynotes or looking for certain workshops or trainings, all those kind of things. And we do all of that as well. We develop all the trainings, workshops for like John Maxwell and Kevin Harrington, Lewis Howes, all these people. And that is really the sweet spot that people need to understand. So credibility, IP clarifier, and just, I think, people underestimate the value of removing that mental clutter that's in their heads. Like you said, you're already working on your next book. Imagine if you hadn't written any of those books. You'd have now 3-4 books floating around up there, and all the while feeling a level of guilt because you haven't done anything with any of them yet. And so it just begins to weigh on you over time, and being able to get that out there in a way you can be proud of, and then say, all right, got that, develop that. Now I'm going to go to this new level. It's kind of making your ideas line up for you for development. So I think all those things coming together, I think, are super helpful for people.
Now that makes a lot of sense, because I know that people think they're going to get out there or they're going to get a lot of reach with their book. I mean, some people do get their book out there and they're going to sell 1 million copies, and they do pretty well. But at the same time, most don't. And again, what's really relevant and what makes sense to me is to put it in line with the other things that you're saying. Okay, now I'm going to develop the keynote around it, or I'm going to do a mastermind around it, or I'm going to do a membership program around it. There's 1,000 reasons why you go out there, and so many people on social media are saying, get your free copy of my book here. They're not even trying to make money on the book. They're trying to get them into whatever it is they're trying to sell. That's just the credibility piece that we're talking about.
Sure. I mean, I won't show it to you here, but I was on Facebook and somebody offered, this was like a travel oriented thing. And they're like, hey, you can get my book, for ebook for free or whatever. You can buy the paperback. So, and it was all entering into a funnel, right? This is stuff I knew what was happening, but I was still intrigued by the idea. And I was like, I actually want that book, right? So it just came in the mail today, so I'm looking forward to diving into it. But it has already reached. They're already reaching out to me. Hey, do you want to join our membership? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? We have all these cool things you can do to engage and so forth. So, to your point, it does take a lot of work. Bestsellers don't happen by accident, right? Everyone has that thought. Well, maybe I'll get lucky and it'll just catch fire, and everyone will want it or something. They take a lot of strategy and a lot of work, as you well know, to get behind it. And often it can take years to build up to it, right? So a succession of books to really establish yourself in the marketplace as an expert resource. And as you get all those pieces lined up over time. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people just aren't patient enough to go through that and to grow with that, right? I think you talk about that in your Outlier Mindset, or they're just not willing to do the work. I think it might even be your first tenet, right?
Yeah, well, if you're not willing to do the work, nothing else is going to fall into place for you, right? You've got to be willing to do it. I think too, though, that some people kind of feel like when I put out my stuff, I went at it a little bit backward. I had my book, I had my stuff laid out, but I hadn't thought about the series of steps that I might have done before I started to write that book to prepare myself for these launches, right? So I've always been a little bit behind, and a lot of people who seem to do very well started out of the gates really well prepared. They're getting their frameworks built out. They're understanding their stories. They're starting to build out their chapters for their books. And then they're eventually getting to that publishing point. And there's going to be a lot of people who are sitting out there listening to this who are going to say, where do I start? How should I start?
Yeah. It's a great question. My answer is going to sound a little fuzzy, but I think it depends. It depends on where you are right now. So for example, if you have built up a successful business consulting business, for example, we work with a lot of business consultants and coaches and so forth. They already have that success. They already have the back. Then I would say the book can be an entryway into even greater success, right? So we've done that. We work with business consultants who already had a lot of success, busy, demanding schedules, in demand. One of them, we've written 2 books now. We've developed multiple workshops. We're doing a digital course now, right? So they're finding other ways to monetize those as they grow. And his aim is not, I want to be on the bestseller list necessarily. He's using it as the engine, and as the engines to drive his business cycle. On the other hand, if someone is just starting out, then I would suggest they first of all get clear on their brand story. right? And these are all things we can help with. You can find other ways to do it too. However you do it, get clear on your brand story. What's your core message? This was something we had worked with you on. You've worked with Brand Builders Group on. I mean, there's a lot of ways to go about all of this. Get clear on your brand story. Get clear on your focus, right? Because if you try to do everything, you'll end up doing nothing, right? You can't be all things to all people. So niche down, find that, and then put the things into place of how am I going to, what am I going to, not only what am I going to talk about, but how am I going to talk about it? And begin building that all with an eye toward capturing emails, building your social media, all those things, both digital real estate you can own, like your own website, your own email list, and digital places where you can kind of rent, like social media and other outlets like that, and begin building that, because those are the numbers that matter. We prepare book proposals for traditional publishers all the time. For some people, that's the route they want to go, and we do book proposals. The number one thing, well, let me put it this way. There are three things that traditional publishers are looking for: platform, platform, and platform, right? They want to know, how many books will you sell if we do nothing? How many you're going to sell as it is? And then can we get behind that and put fuel on that fire and work with you on that, right? Because for the traditional publisher, more than 70% of the books lose money. So they're looking for books that will catch fire. So that's their first step. So build the platform. Once you have that, then I would focus on the book, right? Because the book is your core IP. It's the core of your ideas that you're then going to build out a keynote, a course, a workshop, whatever else you want to do. If you get clear on that core IP that you want to talk about for years to come, that's going to have a lot of legs, right? So that's going to have a high return on your investment, and then you can move on from there.
So Bill, you had mentioned traditional publishing. Now, I know there are different levels of publishing, but can you go over those different types so people can understand what their options are?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So kind of on one side of the spectrum, you've got your traditional publisher, right? Those are your, think Simon and Schuster, Penguin Books, all those bigger names that are out there. The publishing scene has shifted so much. It used to be, if even just a few decades ago, if you wanted to be published, you had to go through some of these big houses. But thanks to technology, that's shifted a lot. In the traditional publishing, they more than anywhere are looking for platform, because that they've consolidated. A lot of the smaller houses have been bought out by the bigger houses, so there's fewer options out there. In order to be published by them, you generally have to go through a literary agent. So you got to sell your ideas to a literary agent first. Then you have to prepare a winning book proposal, and then present that proposal to different publishers and be shopped around. And then if all goes well, someone likes it, they may make you an offer, maybe in advance, maybe not in advance. It depends, depends on what your platform is and what that would look like. So that's on that side. Typically, you're going to get, if you're anywhere from 10 to 15% of the book sales, you'll get as an author, right? So you're giving up most of those in exchange for some level of notoriety and consistency with the publisher in some ways. On the other side, complete other side of the spectrum, again, thanks to technology today, is the pure self-publishing arena, right? Where you say, hey, I'm just going to do it myself. Everybody knows somebody who said, oh, I just went on Amazon and did it myself. The problem is you look at their books and you're like, yeah, I can tell you did that yourself, right? And it's because you don't have time to become an expert on all the different elements of that, of not just the book writing, but the design, the layout, all the different stuff that goes in it, the distribute, all that kind of thing. In the middle is the hybrid space. By the way, the self-publishing space, the advantage is you get to keep all the proceeds. If you sell it, it's yours, but it's also yours to the headaches and all that stuff is with it too. The hybrid space is in the middle, and that's where Storybuilders Press, our own publishing imprint, hangs out. A lot of others hang out as well. Some get closer to the traditional publishing model. Some are closer to the self-publishing. But essentially, it tries to draw the best of traditional publishing, the best of self-publishing, give authors flexibility, but also the high publishing standards, the high editing standards, and the support team behind them as well. And typically in that space, I've seen them go anywhere from like a 50-50 split on royalties to a 70-30, which is where we are. 70 going to the author, only 30 to the publisher, right? But I've seen them all the way up to 50-50. And again, it just kind of depends on that. And that's why I say, what's the best way to go? It depends, right? It depends on a lot of factors that go through that. But we can help people sort through that. And we have those conversations all the time. And it's not those conversations are not designed to get them to come to our option. We may not be the best option. It may be to pursue some of these other options, right? And so we just want to help guide people to that. So do those three arenas make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And the two that I did with you guys, we did the hybrid version. But the one that I did back in 1984, that was self-published. And back then, it was very, very different. I mean, you didn't have Amazon. You didn't have a lot of these online retailers. It was literally, okay, I'm going to get 2,000 copies of this. Then I'm going to go door to door to the bookstores and see if they're going to put me on their shelves or start making the calls. It was a real tough lift to be a self-publisher back then. A little bit easier now, probably with the technology, but having the hybrid method and the way to do it that way, it's just been so much easier. I'm probably a pain in the butt, I'll tell you, but your staff is so good.
So many people think the process should be easy or something's wrong, but the creative process is usually messy. You know, I've never worked on a book that just went exactly as I thought it would. And it always has bumps and twists and turns. The key is, not to be derailed by those, not to be put out by those, to understand that's all part of the process. Let's work through it. When I work on books at like a premium level, we offer premier collaborative service. People can work directly with me with the support of the team. Every book I've ever worked on at every point gets feedback that doesn't align with what I was thinking, right? And so you have to hold, I think, so that aligns with everybody. They have to hold your ideas and plans loosely as you work through that in order to navigate to get the aim is to get the book to a better place that will touch more people and resonate with more people. So yeah, no, you have not been a problem, Rodman. In fact, quite the opposite. The team has nothing but, we love Rodman, love talking to him, love engaging with him. It's all good.
Bill, you've just got such a great team. They've just been so gracious and so fun to work with. And it's just been incredible. And the thing is with entrepreneurs, you're an entrepreneur, you know how it is. We've always got something going on. We're always driving. We're always going forward. And sometimes you get a team who's trying to get you to stay on a track with them, but you're on this track over here. And your team has been so gracious and so flexible and so understanding, going, okay, Rodman, he's not quite ready to get on the track yet. We're going to let him sit over there until he's ready to get on this track. And then we're going to go. But you're very lucky to have a flexible team like that, because some teams aren't like that. They're just pretty demanding, but yours isn't. Yours is a very special team.
They are an amazing team. And it also calls out, I think, one of the benefits we bring to projects like that is a healthy accountability, right? So for example, our story coaching service that we provide, where someone says, hey, I want to do the writing myself. I got this, but I need guidance, I need framework, I need strategy, and I need accountability and coaching and editing through that process. That really helps them to know, hey, I'm supposed to have a chapter draft to the team by X date. I need to hit that. Right? It's coaching, right? So it gives that accountability through that. I had the privilege of working with a gentleman, Jason Wilson. I don't know if you've heard that name. A tremendous guy, tremendous influencer. And that was what we were doing, right? He had written a couple books previously, been great success working with traditional publisher. And, but he felt, again, he needed to elevate it, didn't have a lot of time on his schedule to do that. So came to work with me and the team, and we worked with him to do that. I think we took it not just another level, but several levels, and turned it into the publisher. I don't remember the publishing date that it comes out next, but it's an amazing book, right? So because of that, and it was that kind of coaching, editing, let's elevate the ideas to go to the next level.
Sometimes we can aimlessly drift through our life, not really sure how to break the patterns and live the life that you've always dreamed of. I get it. I have been there, so caught up in chasing opportunities until I found myself in a life that felt foreign to me. It took me years to unwind the messy web to get back to what I've been put on this planet to do. And let me tell you this, purpose doesn't have to feel out of arm's reach. And I've designed a plan for you to do a little bit each day over the next 30 days in a challenge that I call the Outlier 30. It's specifically designed to help you find or create more clarity around your purpose. So if you're feeling lost and you want to finally turn things around and live that life that you were destined to create, sign up right now. It's free. You have absolutely nothing to lose and the whole world to gain.
Visit gorodman.com/outlier30 today.
Bill, what kind of people are typically coming to you for books? It seems like quite the variety, because I've seen your list of books and they're all over the board. I mean, it might not just be an influencer, but it might be somebody who's in the spiritual space or in finance. There's just all these different spaces. But what's the person like who comes to you and really wants to write that book?
Yeah, I would say there's kind of three main areas, maybe six if you look at it all together. First area is entrepreneurs, corporate leaders. Right. So this is, we've written books with chief HR officer at Fortune 50 companies. But we work with entrepreneurs like yourself, numerous others. So that's one, the business space. Speakers and influencers, like keynote speakers who are on stages all the time, influencers, Lewis Howes, people like that, others. That's probably the second. The third, again, is those business coaches and consultants, where they have a thriving consulting business or something they're doing, or they want to get clarity on their IP, the book, et cetera. Those are the primary three. The other ones might be like political figures, cultural voices, athletes, fitness gurus. And then this is one we really love working with, and that's mission-driven or nonprofit leaders, right? They're focused on a certain cause or nonprofit leader, and the book can be a win for them and the nonprofit to bring attention to their cause, to their message. We have one that's coming out shortly, actually, in this space. Compassionate Love is the name of it, by Rick Allen, and really just highlighting mission work around the world that they have poured themselves into for decades now, and just helping people see what it's like for the incredible stories that people are out there helping people in places where it seems unimaginable to help people, and yet they're doing it. And it's just those kind of leaders, we love working with them too.
It seems to me that people who really want to leave a body of work, a lot of times, like you said, we're not going to be here forever. There's going to be a time when we're going to expire. Life's going to go on. The world's going to keep on spinning. And for me, when I'm building what I'm building, I'm always thinking about it in terms of my body of work. What kind of knowledge am I going to pass on? What are my kids going to have when I'm gone to say, this was my father's body of work? Those kind of things. And I think that a lot of people who come to you look for that, or they're going through that type of thought process.
Yeah, I think, and there is some of that. Usually people have at least some level of some business reason, right? We help them unpack that and develop that. But I think you're right. When it really comes down to it, it's a sense that I have this calling in my soul, or something stirring within me that I feel like I have to get it out there, or I don't want to run out of time having left that undone in order to do that. And I know for me, one of the reasons we started Storybuilders was I didn't want to do that in a way that was less than excellent. Right. And so I don't want other people to have to settle for that. I don't want other people to have to say, well, at least I got it out. Hope nobody looks too closely at it. I want them to be like, man, I am so proud of that. And their kids to be saying, I'm proud of that. And generations to come say, man, that was an impactful book. That's what we want. Right. So that's why we go about everything with that mix of excellence and people first care, to kind of meld those together. Because we're here to help people tell stories that make the world a better place. And so if we can engage people in a way that, first of all, that relationship itself is adding value to the world, and helping them tell a story that does that, then, we talk to the team all the time how we are a story multiplier, right? We're multiplying, bending that curve, multiplying that impact of people's stories. That's where we're at. We're often behind the scenes helping push other people out there. And that's why we do what we do.
So I've gone through the process with you guys from the very beginning. On the Outlier Mindset, that was the one where I went in and I would write, and then I would hand it off to the team, and they're going to go in and take what I've written and make it better and elevate it, like you said earlier. Now, the other one is the one I wrote from front to back. But at the same time, what should people expect? If they come to you, Bill, maybe you can explain a little bit about the process, because it was such an enjoyable process for me. And I know it's going to be different for every single person, but what should people expect when they come into you guys and say, I want to write this book?
Sure. Well, the first thing that happens is a call with one of our senior story strategists. Again, so there's no obligation to that. We talk through the ideas. We see if it's a fit. We might point you some other direction if we think that's a better fit. Whatever that looks like begins there. If it does feel like a fit, then we'll put together a plan of what that can look like, go through an onboarding process. You get to know the team, get everything in place. We kick off, we get going. Typical book, let's say we're writing the book with somebody. The first 4 to 6 weeks, maybe even 8 weeks, we're working on getting the framework, what we call the story structure, get all that stuff in place. Once we have that, then we can actually begin drafting. And we put a lot of attention on chapter 1 if we're doing the writing, because we want to make sure we're getting what we call the voice check. We want to get your voice as an author nailed down in a way that we want to do it in a way that, your spouse or significant other reads it and like, oh, sounds exactly like you, right? Understanding it's a book, it's not a speech, right? So it's a different medium, but we get that nailed down, and then we set up a good rhythm and we go through and we write the book, right? And so that's really the fun, creative part. In the midst of all that, we start on things like cover design. Once we're done, we get interior layout done. We gear up toward the launch. We begin to have those conversations to help them put into place things they need on their end. And we move toward a publication date. And if we're publishing it either under our imprint or someone else's imprint, it's us getting all the accounts set up, getting all the distribution squared away so that when it's go time, people can get the book and begin reading it. And often during that time, we realize, hey, you could turn this component into a digital course. You could develop a workshop or something beyond that, or take advantage of our story sharing service, where we offer additional services to help implement some of these book launch strategies, core team launch strategies, and so forth. We can do that, or add audiobooks or whatever the case may be. All of that, we kind of walk through them with that. So it's step by step. And throughout all of it, there's a single story guide who's kind of like the point person, right? So we have a whole team, but there's always a single person that, hey, if I have a question, I'm going to ask so-and-so. And they're going to be the ones to really keep me up to date of exactly what's going on.
I think one of the greatest things too, Bill, is like I was saying earlier, it's like that first self-published book. I got like 2,000 copies in and I was pounding on doors to sell them. It just doesn't happen that way anymore. You don't have to do that. Talk a little bit about the printing process, because I only touch books that I order in for myself, and that's it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You don't have to truck them around in your trunk or store them in your basement and hope they don't get moldy or anything like that. Back in the day, I knew someone actually, probably 15 years ago, who had a bunch of books, stored them in a storage locker, and the entire storage locker flooded. They lost all the books. You don't have to worry about any of that anymore. You can, if you want to, you can go, order 10,000 copies from China or something and get them cheap. But there's no need to do that. With print on demand technology today, really one of the best options out there to keep it flexible, right? So literally someone goes on Amazon, they click buy, and the book is printed and shipped to them, right? So there's no standing inventory. Amazon takes care of the transaction, or wherever you're buying your books, and that'd be Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble, whatever. They just take care of it. And remembering that higher than 80% of books today are sold on Amazon. Like that's where people go to get books. Another 10, 15% are sold other places. Only about 5% of books today are sold in bookstores anymore, right? So you're looking online when people want to get a book. I mean, it happens to me. I'll go into a bookstore, see a book I want, I pull up Amazon and say, can I have it delivered to my home tomorrow for less than, because I know I'm not going to read it right. So, but yeah, it's just so headache free now, right? You don't have to give it a thought. And so a lot of that print on demand, you don't have to warehouse books or anything like that and pay ongoing fees to make that happen. No, you don't have any of that, and none of the headaches involved with those things either.
And it's nice too, because I can buy X amount of copies at my cost if I'm going to say, send them out to some podcasters, or if I want to do news interviews or whatever it might be. I can buy whatever I need, have them sent here, and then just follow up and make media appearances off of that.
Yeah. And what we do, I don't know if other similar places do this, but what we do, if you're using those for promotional purposes, like we don't take any royalties from that or anything, because it's just promoting the book, right? So it's just at cost, right? So we try to make that, we try to be the best partners we can with our story partners, right? Which is why we call them that, because that's how I view the relationship.
Yeah, I can really feel that, by the way. I felt that from the first time that you and I met. When Lewis introduced us and we had that chance to talk, I could tell who you were right then. And story partners, I love that term, because that's so true to who you guys are as a group. I mean, literally, I feel like you guys are my partner on this book project.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome to hear, Rodman. Glad to hear that.
And I need to pick it up though. I need to do a little bit better myself. I need to start to get out there a little bit more. So yeah, no, it's been such an enjoyable process. What about Bill? Talk a little bit more about how many people do you actually have writing with you, or how many staff do you have, and what are the different components that each person does on your staff?
Great question. We're growing quickly. So some of the answers to that are, it depends on what month it is, right? Because we're always learning and growing and adjusting and tweaking. I think the whole team, probably we have somewhere between 20 and 30. If you look at the external layers and so forth, we have different people available for different projects. But the whole process really resolves around, again, the story guide. The story guide is the one who's, think of it as project leader, right? They're the contact person. They're the ones seeing it through from start to finish. Our story director heads up what we call as our wonder team. This was inspired by Lencioni's Working Genius, actually, which is they'll come in early in the process and really get creative on the ideas and the framework and set the tone for everything. And then our story artisans are more the writers, the editors. They're coming in alongside them and then flowing through with that framework, right? So I think you work with people like Morgan and others, right? Just a variety of people who can bring those writing skills together. What we try to do is have a team that allows everyone to play to their strengths, right? And not try to be all things to all people. When it comes time to publishing, then our publishing specialist steps in and works a lot of those things, works with our designers. Cover designers are coming into the process, interior designers coming into the process. All of which to bring all those pieces together and up and out into the world. And then we have other people like our audiobook producers or, web designers and all those kind of people as well who have been part of the team for many, many years. And I think that's one of all of that is there. I'm admittedly biased. However, I think one of our distinctives is our culture. Right. And our culture is really driven by our values, which is 6 core values that make up the acronym CREATE, because we're always trying to create a story worth telling. That's our creativity, relationships, excellence, authenticity, teamwork, and energy. That those 6 things really drive how we approach all of it. And I think contribute to story partners having an experience where, I mean, I'd have to think of an exception to this, but I mean, it happens so rarely where they're just like, man, we love working with you guys. We develop friendships, we develop relationships through this. And that to me is so key, because everywhere in any process, you're going to hit bumps in the road. You're going to have unexpected things happen. You're going to things you didn't anticipate. And having that relationship gives you the ability and really gives you the strength of a story partner to have the confidence that you can navigate those and know that you have a team supporting you, and whatever that looks like, we'll figure it out. So,
okay, Bill, I got to ask you a little bit about AI. So AI is here to stay. We know that, right? It's not going away. It keeps advancing. It keeps getting better and better. And a lot of people keep asking me, is AI going to replace writing? And I always say, it depends. AI is never going to be able to tell my story. Like, I might be able to feed it my story, and it might be able to regurgitate a form of my story, but I kind of feel like your story is your story. And that's what's going to make you unique in your writing process versus maybe like a textbook. Maybe a lot of textbooks are going to start coming out, and AI is going to be very, very instrumental in those, those non-fictional type books. But your story is so unique. I can't imagine AI coming in and being able to replace you, being able to pull those levers.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And I think it is here to stay. We need to learn how to leverage its strengths. But at the same time, there's a couple things about AI that it can't do, right? So AI, for example, doesn't know your story. What AI does, ChatGPT, all these other sources, they go out and kind of collate what other people have put out there already, right? And so that brings up challenges. If you're trying to really develop your core IP, it presents legal challenges. It presents all sorts of challenges that if you try to then make that your own legally, you can't do that because it's someone else's, right? So if you're trying to build a lot of stuff, that can really come back and bite you on that. And there's a whole lot of copyright issues that are going before the courts right now that'll all be fleshed out in years to come. But the other thing is, AI has never had an original thought. right? And so one of the things that we humans can do is we can take A and B and put that with X over here and divide it by R and come up with an entirely different perspective that feels fresh and new and a new insight, right? And so AI can't do that. And then AI certainly can't align that with your story, right? And with what's going on inside you and your heart and your passion in a way that can connect heart to heart with other people, right? And so that's the key. I think the key is find ways to use AI to take shortcuts, but not detours, right? And that's the key is people are just all in on AI. They're going to end up taking detours, doing a lot of work, going around, ending up right back where they started when it all, caves in on them or it falls way beneath them. And so I think just being smart about it and finding ways to do that, I think like anything, just like a few decades ago, we were all, like you said, I had to publish thousands of books. And so things change. And with that, we have to adapt to that and tell our story. But I think there's ways to use it and use it well. And I think you're doing a great job using it and putting it to use in many different ways. So I would say explore it, but just be fully aware of the limits that you're going to encounter.
I just kind of look at AI as my writing partner, a partner that's beside me if I get stuck somewhere or my thought process is a little stalled. I can always go in, I can stimulate some thought for me, but I won't just take this piece and throw it on paper, but it can stimulate something in me to make me go, oh yeah, that's right. And then I can go down the road again.
Yeah. Yeah. As long as you're guarding against, it's so easy to slide into like, oh, that not only stimulated my thought, I'm just going to cut and paste that. just run with it. Right. I mean, I did this. We're in the process of selling our house right now. And the description of the house, like I'm a writer, right? It's what I do. So I worked on it and wordsmithed it a little bit. And then we ran it through ChatGPT and it's like, oh, actually that version's a little bit better because I gave it the original. All right. But I had to check it, right? Like this part here wasn't quite right. And this wasn't accurate, but so it's almost like having, another writing partner or voice or be able to speak into that, give a little bit of an objective perspective, almost from a crowdsourcing voice, if you will. So with that, there's pros and there's cons.
Yeah, I like using it for that. I actually go and I'll write something, then I'll do what you did. I'll drop it in and just say, make it sound better. But that's not going to be my prompt. I'll put in the prompt to make it cleaner, to make it better. It knows how to write in my voice now too, because I kind of taught it that. So it's very clean in my voice and just a little bit better than what I would have said.
Yeah. And then, then you bring alongside someone who is really good at what they're doing on the writing side, like that's their focus, and they can take that and even upgrade it even more. Right. So it just opens up the world of possibilities.
Yeah. I think for somebody who's sitting there going, I don't know where to start. I don't know if I can write a book. I just don't believe there's those excuses out there anymore. You've got every single tool necessary, everything that you need. You got people like your group who can come in and who can help people from very start to the very finish to get a really, really good product, something to be really proud of. When the Outlier Mindset came in, that's kind of my baby. And it was so nice to get that in the mail. And that's it. There you go. I just loved opening that book up and holding it and seeing what we had created from nothing. I mean, from a thought to a finished book that I'm really, really proud of and I really love.
Yeah. I mean, I remember you and I were standing outside of Summit of Greatness a couple of years ago in the kind of alleyway there with Lewis and Matt and team. And you and I kept talking about your book and the ideas that you had. And to go from that conversation to this, right, where we actually have the book, that is so fulfilling for me and for our team, right? To know that we can go from idea to completion. I've worked on books that someone sent me a text message from the beach saying, here's my 6 points that I'm thinking, right? And we ran with that and came out with the whole book, right? And so to go from start to finish, that's kind of the joy to me, because there's a lot of things to navigate in between, and there's just no excuse for people anymore. If you were having to get out, a quill and a scroll and all that kind of stuff, all right, I could see that could be challenging depending on your life circumstances, or even if you had to use a typewriter, right? Back in the day, we had to get the white out and all that kind of stuff.
Bill, you're dating yourself here. I remember that, but I'm certainly not going to be talking about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I saw it in an antique store and I tried it once. That's all I'm saying.
I remember typing lessons where you had to take that thing and you'd push it over. I can't remember what that was called. You type, you push it over, and you start a new line.
Yeah. Yeah. I would just think about that today. Like the reason that button is called return on my keyboard, I think that used to be like the carriage return or something, right? Where the whole carriage had to go travel halfway across the world to start your new page, right? But whatever. We don't have those barriers anymore. It's so easy and it's going to get easier.
So a couple of things, Bill. First of all, I want people to be able to find you because you've been such a valuable resource for me, and I love the process with you. So I want people to be able to find you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, the first thing I would invite people to do is if you think you have an idea for a book or you've been wanting to write a book or people have been telling you you should write a book, or also if you've been thinking, maybe I have a book or I have ideas, I want to do a digital course or a workshop or training or program, keynote, whatever that looks like, I would invite them to just schedule a call with us, schedule a call with one of our senior story strategists to talk it through, right? There's no obligation with that. We'll have a conversation like we're having now and figure out if we're a fit. If we're not, that's fine. We want to get out of people's way. If we're not a fit, we want to get out of your way and let you live your story and tell your story, whatever works for you. So to do that, you go to mystorybuilders.com, mystorybuilders.com/story, mystorybuilders.com/story, and just book your time. I mean, it's that simple. You can be talking to somebody, tomorrow or next couple of days. And find out, right? You owe it to yourself, I think, to find out, and it's free. I don't know how you can go wrong with that. You can check out our website, mystorybuilders.com, learn more about us. Look us up on LinkedIn and Instagram and all your favorite socials and all that stuff. But, I would start right there. Let's just have a conversation, mystorybuilders.com/story.
And that's where you and I started. You and I met at the Summit of Greatness, and we did the same thing. We sat down and we found a pathway, and then we went.
Yeah, and no two people are alike. I mean, we have kind of packages of services and so forth, but we always approach everything with, we're not trying to squeeze people into our boxes. We genuinely want to know, where are you at and what works for you, and how can we find something that could be a win for you? And as I say, if we can't, let's get out of your way and keep doing what you're doing, because to us, at the end of the day, if we're not helping tell stories that make the world a better place, then we don't want to be doing it. Right? That's counterproductive to everything that we're about.
Yeah, for sure. And Bill, before you go though, I always ask everybody this one last question. And that's, if you could go back in time and sit down with your younger self and give your younger self one piece of your most valuable advice that you have acquired over a lifetime of experience, what would you tell your younger self?
I would say to write. When I was a teenager, I always knew I loved to write. I loved to read. I love stories, right? So even as a child, I had this within me. So I read voraciously. I read everything I could get my hands on. I read the cereal box 10 times every morning, anything that had words on it, I was reading, and I loved to write. But then, as I moved into adulthood, right, it kind of, life kind of happened. I ended up doing good work. I ended up helping to start a private school, a faith-based school, and put a dozen years in that as we got married and had kids, and all good stuff. But I realized at one point that I thought of myself as a writer. I always called myself a writer, and I realized I wasn't actually writing. Right. So, 15 plus years had gone by or more, and I wasn't actually writing. And so, what I had to reconnect with that dream earlier in my life and realize, almost similar to the Outlier Mindset, right? I had to realize that there's something I have that makes me truly unique. That is a passion and a gift that I have. Reconnect with that. So I was able to then step away from the school I had helped build and poured myself into and thought, I'm going to be here forever. Only to conclude, actually, somebody else can do this better than I can, but only I can do what's in my heart to do. And so stepping out into that, and I've been doing that for the last, 13, 14 years or whatever. And so my advice would be, don't, all that stuff was good. I was doing good in the world, but at the same time, don't forget what that gift is, what that talent is, what's really inside of you. Because it's so easy to just set that aside and think I'll get to it later. And so many people never get to it later. I was blessed to actually have gotten back to it and turn back to it and focus on it. And I think because of that, already the world's a better place because the books that I've worked on to help bring them to life and our team and so forth. And I'm looking forward to more. And we want to multiply that to help even more people. Our mission is to serve 1,000 story partners. And at first glance, that doesn't sound like a lot until you realize that, one of those story partners is a Rodman Schley, one of those is a Lewis Howes, one of those is a John Maxwell. So we're trying to bend that curve to multiply the impact of other people. That's what motivates us. So if we can help 1,000 people do that, we're going to touch a whole heck of a lot of lives in that process.
I love that you're my story partner, Bill. You guys have been so fantastic. I hope people go out and they buy the Outlier Mindset. You can get it on Amazon. And when you do, make sure you take a picture of it. Send it to me at rodman@gorodman.com. I love getting those pictures. But Bill, thank you for coming on the show today. I really, really appreciate you and everything that you do.
Oh, absolutely. And when you buy it on Amazon, leave a review, leave an awesome review of how awesome it is so other people can hear it. And wherever you buy it, leave a review because it really is a great book, Rodman. You really have an inspiring message. I'm going to be giving it, once I get it back from my wife, I'm going to be giving it to one of my sons who's really in that young adult space, trying to find out what his next best path is. And I think there are a lot of people who are outliers and just don't appreciate the value of that. So I'm looking forward to that. Appreciate you, Rodman. You're a tremendous story partner, friend, and we've just enjoyed working with you guys. And looking forward to seeing what the future might bring as well. And frankly, to your listeners as well. If there's anything we can do to help them and serve them in any way, as I said, reach out, mystorybuilders.com/story, and we're happy to help them.